Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we convene our second of two programs on extraterrestrial contact with someone who's observed history unfolding over many, many decades and has her own experience of the extraterrestrials. Before we dive into that experience, I want to just note that we're coming up day after tomorrow to the third anniversary of the killing by the Iranian regime of the young woman Mahsa Amini, who, if my memory serves me correctly, was only 21 years old for not wearing her hijab correctly. This was triggered in my mind by the events over the last week in Palestine, in the West Bank, where a young woman, Ajnur Ezgi, was peacefully protesting. She's a U.S. citizen of Turkish origin. She was so passionate about the genocide against the Palestinians that she traveled from abroad to go to Israel, to go to the West Bank and protest. And that was the level of her commitment. And she was shot in the head by an Israeli sniper. And so once again, we're seeing, as Mahsa Amini demonstrated, the extraordinary passion and revolutionary fervor of young women. And so reached out to Banafsheh Sayad, who has been on Humanity Rising multiple times on various issues, but most recently, she was our commentator back in 2021 when Mahsa Amini was killed, and has been commenting on this situation in Iran episodically since then. So we asked her to come on and just speak to us for a few minutes about the importance of that event, how it's playing out in Iran to the present day, and how we can remember the martyrdom of revolutionary leaders. So Banafsheh, thank you for joining us, and just share with us what you would like to share, and then I'll circle back.
Thank you so much, Jim. Hello, everyone. So this is the second anniversary of the murder of Mahsa Amini in Iran. Mahsa Jina Amini was a 22-year-old beautiful Kurdish woman who was traveling to Tehran with her brother when she was detained by the so-called morality police for not wearing her hijab properly. She was then beaten and consequently went into a coma and passed. The date of her passing falls on Sunday, September 15th. Her passing, this tragic passing of Mahsa Amini, her murder, triggered the Woman Life Freedom Movement, which is the first freedom movement led by women in the world. And what happened on, this movement that was triggered from her murder brought together Iranians across Iran and abroad, Iranians who had left Iran subsequent to the Islamic Revolution in 1979 to various parts of the world. It brought all of us together for the very first time since the Islamic Revolution. No single event or idea, even though we all oppose the regime, the Islamic regime, no single event or idea had been able to bring us together, unite us together like that. So people protested across Iran and across the world. peacefully. People marched from all walks of life together. But quickly, the regime cracked down on people and started shooting at peaceful protesters, killing them, maiming them, imprisoning them. Most of the protesters were very young people, teenagers and people in their 20s. And many were killed and imprisoned, as I said. The official count of the killing is 500 something, but we know that the number was in the thousands. Many were detained, are still detained. Somewhere around 20,000 people were detained, and many of them still are imprisoned. Several people were executed, several very young people in their 20s, early 30s were executed. And this tragedy, in the wake of this great unity and this great fervor to come out on the streets and demand freedom, really curbed this congregation of people. It was a fear tactic, obviously, and it kept people off the streets, in groups. But the civil disobedience continued in the acts of removing the mandatory hijab, not wearing it in public, or staging various dance protests. Dance is considered a sin in Islam, and especially women's dancing in public is illegal. So the dance and not wearing the hijab became very prominent modes of civil disobedience. And then we had the families of the slain heroes demanding justice for the murder of their loved ones. And these family members were also imprisoned. Imagine that you seek justice for the slaying of your innocent family member, and you're put in prison as well. Some of these family members are still in prison for simply demanding justice. So things have been, people say, what happened to this movement, to this revolution? It's still alive. You don't see it as much in the way that we saw it in the beginning following the murder of Mahsa Amini. In the first few months after her death in 2022, but it still continues. This ship that has sailed will not return. Many of us are very, very much aimed at overthrowing the regime, basically changing the regime, and activity still continues. Civil disobedience still continues. But in the past few weeks, the regime has really pressurized a lot of the families of the slain heroes, as well as artists and athletes who are well known in the society. The regime has threatened them so that they don't consider joining any kind of movement, any kind of protest. Some of the artists have been imprisoned. Some well-known singers, like the person who sang the song Baraye that won an Emmy, has been imprisoned, and also a very vocal rappist, Toumaj Salehi, has been imprisoned, all for just their art. So in coming up onto Sunday, where a lot of protests have been organized around the world, we want to remember these martyrs, as Jim said, these heroes who stood up for freedom, and we want to make sure that they didn't die in vain.
Thank you, Banafsheh. Say a little bit more about events that are planned. I hadn't caught anything in the news, but there'll be events around the United States and internationally, presumably. Do you have any further details?
There has been a call to for protests in major cities around the world. I know of the one in the Los Angeles area where I live. But I'm in Washington, absolutely, there are protests that are being organized for sure. But many cities around the world, definitely.
Good, 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 good.
If people are interested, they can inquire. They can find out where the protests will be taking place locally on
Yeah,
Sunday.
great. Thank you so much. And I know that you were here on Humanity Rising a few days ago about a course that you're going to be delivering through the Shift Network. Tell us a little bit about the course and how we can participate.
Well, it's what I did on Tuesday was an interview about the course that will be starting in October. And this interview, the topic of the interview is the hidden link between Mary Magdalene and the Sufis, particularly when it comes to activating a body of light, because the topic of the course I'm doing in October is about activating a body of light and really coming into wholeness.
Mm.
What will be aired on Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific is a replay of the interview where people can learn more about this hidden link between Mary Magdalene and the Sufis, and also learn about the course that I'm doing in October, that's starting in October.
Well, maybe you can put the link so that people can access the replay tomorrow, and a link to your website so people can sign up for the course. Someone who knows Banafsheh quite well and has seen her sacred dance and choreography over the years, I can testify that no one does it as well as Banafsheh Sayad. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you.
Be well. Okay, everyone, what we're going to do now is shift over to Kathleen Marden. You'll remember yesterday, Kathleen, as a small child, was there in the extended family of Betty and Barney Hill, who were the iconic experiencers of ET abduction back in 1961. This event changed her life. Subsequently, she had her own experiences. She's been a relentless researcher in this domain, and has also been doing research in the relationship between religions and ETs. So Kathleen is going to complete her presentation. And so I want to welcome you, Kathleen, to Humanity Rising for your final session. Kathleen will show us some PowerPoint, and then I'll circle back for a dialogue for the balance of the time. But thank you, Kathleen, very much.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint. And I'll bring it up from the beginning. So today I'm going to be talking about my transformation from being a nuts and bolts kind of investigator of all of this to taking an entirely different turn with the acquisition of overwhelming evidence, and my move toward becoming an experiencer advocate, having written a year-long or a summer-long report. I did research at the University of New Hampshire on all of the academic studies that I could find on hypnosis, became a hypnotherapist, and then a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. So quite a bit of growth and transformation over those years. I want to get into just briefly some of the perplexing phenomena that I've became aware of over time. These screen memories where you might see a giant owl or a giant rabbit or a giant deer, or maybe even a clown. A child might see a clown in his or her bedroom, or any of a number of things, and then somehow they shift and they become ETs, usually grays. And so the question is, are they actually shapeshifters? Or are they cloaking themselves? Or are they managing our thoughts? My opinion is that they manage our thoughts. I'm not saying there aren't shapeshifters, but I believe that those, from all of the research that I've done in my team at MUFON did over a 10-year period, we believe that the shapeshifters are negative interdimensionals. So there's also solid surface penetration by ETs into the human environment and from the human body out through a portal or an opening in a roof, usually in a window. I think that's easier that way. And I talked to two prominent physicists, Dr. Rudy Shield from Harvard Astrophysics Laboratory, and now retired, and the late Claude Swanson. And what they told me is that 99% of the atom is empty space between the protons and the electrons. And you get them into alignment so they can interpenetrate. So you have to align the frequency and phase. And when you do this, they can interpenetrate. Now, our level of technology is obviously ancient, very inadequate compared to our visitors, but that is a physics explanation for what does occur. I was even told that this has happened on a very small scale at the CERN using neutrinos. You know, there's paralysis of the human body. You feel a tingling sensation, and then you're not able to move. I believe that is to protect you during transport, because you're taken into what appears to be an interdimensional beam, and I'll be showing you that beam. You would have telepathic communication between ETs and humans, something unseen or partially observed in the home environment. You might see a shimmering figure that will communicate with you telepathically. You might see just the outline of a figure, or sometimes you might see a translucent figure that's kind of grayish. You know, some of these things could be ghosts, but for experiencers, they are seen and communicated with in the way that ETs, or non-human intelligence, communicates. We have electromagnetic anomalies. We've known that for many years. Batteries, electrical equipment, watches, etc., malfunction shortly after the experiencer is returned. Many experiencers have difficulty wearing watches altogether. Unusual pattern marks on the skin. And here are some of the common patterned marks from some of my cases. We find these around the world and across the United States. This one was for healing, a puncture wound for healing. Missing time. It couldn't be from minutes to days. And some people have told me that they were returned before they were taken. So the distortion of time and space. Light orbs that seem to have intelligence in or around the home. And we know that there are other explanations for light orbs, such as plasma, ball lightning, ghosts, but the ones that have ET intelligence are different. And I'll be showing you some of this. And implants, we used to believe that the implants that are highly advanced technology that have been removed from the human body were in order for the ETs to locate the human. We now realize that they are not tracking devices. And we believe that they are communication devices and that they also monitor the health of the human body. In one of my important cases that I wrote about in the alien abduction files, we have Denise Stoner's sketch of these 3 orbs that came down from the bottom of the craft and then turned into little gray ETs. She was absorbed into what was kind of, she felt like was a gelatinous substance, and there were little specks in it. This is what she drew here. And as she was absorbed in, she was taken to craft and found herself in a hallway with small grays known as the guard. She said these soldiers lined up against the wall. They did not move unless they were instructed to do so. After her examination, an implant was inserted. DNA was taken from her, genetic material. She was given a tour of the central core of the craft. And you can see, I hope you can see my cursor. This is what it looked like. It looked like a lotus, she said. And others who have had this experience have also described this as being biological, living material. She walked in on sort of a catwalk, spongy underneath her feet, and something was moving in the floor beneath her that was black and red. The whole room was as if it was a beating heart, and she felt like she was inside this beating heart, a living being, and then pressure around her body. There was no light in the room. She felt sorry for this entity, but the entity responded to her and said, I volunteered for this. Don't feel sorry for me, and gave her a great deal of information when she was in there. You have to be an advanced experiencer to have this kind of experience. And she has been a lifelong experiencer and an intergenerational experiencer. Here she is when she was younger, and her story is in the alien abduction files. We wonder, is this ET phenomena, or is it pareidolia, the human mind's tendency to see familiar figures, or maybe even human figures that really are not? This is one of my very important cases from North Carolina, where 3 individuals were taken together into 3 different portals. They were researchers, 2 of them. The other was a confirmed experiencer. I had, in fact, introduced them, and they set up this experiment. The experiencer was attempting to call in craft or an orb. The craft was coming in closer and closer. They were holding their equipment. They were ready. They had a camera set up in another portion of the yard. And very briefly, the next thing they knew, they were no longer holding their equipment. They found it underneath a bush. They were feeling nauseated. They were weaving. They took down their camera. They went into the home. The experiencer's wife said, "Where have you been?" They said, "Just in the backyard." And she said, "No, you have not. I've been searching for you." When the researchers examined the film on the camera, they found a few minutes of what appear to be non-human entities. There were two of these sort of indigo colored beams that suddenly shot out. There were also these what appeared to be little orbs or specks that were shiny. And this is an enlargement of this beam and what could possibly be an entity dropping off the beam. In another part of the video, there was an entity that was sitting on the ground. It suddenly was enveloped in blue, and it lifted into the air. Its head is down. You can see hands on knees, feet that appear to be attached to this technological device. This is another section of that video that I cut out, and you can see the entity here, blue light in hand. The blue light captured these humans, and they were transported, absorbed into this blue light and transported to the craft. He's wearing something on his forehead, some kind of device. And he was just moving across the screen, looking from side to side. This is a close-up of his face. You can see this is technology. It's not feathers or hair or anything like that. You can see a snout, two eyes. And then on another slide, or section of the film, I should say, was something that one of the experiencers described to me in hypnosis. I did separate hypnosis sessions with the two researchers, and I did an interview with the experiencer, who was a confirmed experiencer, very well known. So what we see here is what one of the experiencers described as female with big floppy feet and a wand. And, very strange. I'm not sure if it's what we see here or not. Very, very long story. I do an entire presentation on this case, but compelling in my opinion. One of the researchers in this case received information, both of them did actually, but this is some important information from one of them. There is none of this BS that you always hear about, like experiments and probes. There is none of that. I feel like I'm just home. I had to come back. Whatever I'm supposed to be doing here, I am not yet done. There is going to be more. It's about the raising of the vibration of everything. Earth is not the only planet that has these issues. We must increase the vibration because it is the only way that anyone will become aware and understand and become their better selves to ensure the survival of the planet and the creatures on it. It's not just the humans that have to increase their vibration. It's every living creature. Much more to that story. This is another one of my very important cases that I investigated. This experiencer I had worked with over time, and I did these as independent cases. I began with MUFON, with the nuts and bolts investigations. It didn't work for me. So then I moved on to doing my own investigations where I could investigate and record all of the data, not just some of it. This was an amateur astronomer, began as a MUFON case, so just a UFO sighting, and I believe it was 2011, close encounter, and then he contacted me. I remained in touch with him over several years, and this is what I do with all of the important cases that I work with, because I found that I have to teach people how to collect evidence. And when they know that, then they will collect evidence. Unfortunately, he contacted me in 2016, and he had developed lymphoma. You can see this very enlarged section of his neck. I had his medical records. I sent medical records to a physician, and the physician who works in this field obtained all of his medical records pertaining to this. I said to him, ask for healing, because I've worked with several people who have been given healing by these non-humans, either through surgical procedures. He had actually had a surgical procedure at one time by these non-humans. Maybe exposure to a type of light or heat, or exposure to a very strong vibrational frequency or energy. And they have been healed from any of a variety of disorders. Cancer, heart disease. I worked with one man who was no longer able to walk. The ETs took him for several days, and he was then able to walk again. Some amazing stories. And I want to play for you the video that he sent. He could sense the presence of these ETs, and he was ready to capture video of them. So, whoops, for some reason, I need to go back. So let me go back and click on this again. Here we are. You're going to see this orb slide down the road, and there it is, crossing the room. And you can see, you know, we talked yesterday in a group about hitchhikers and the blue orbs from the Skinwalker Ranch that sting the scientists who take them home with them, not intentionally. This is a blue orb. I want to play this again and slow it down for you. I wasn't able to grab it. Let me back it up to it. Here it is coming down. It flies. It reminds me of a butterfly as it moves through the room, morphing as it moves. It has that beautiful light blue outer area and the ecru colored center. It flies. It moves toward him, and then it dives down into his body. He immediately falls asleep for 12 hours. And when he awakens, the enlarged nodes are no longer there. When he goes in for surgery, 4 tiny necrotic nodes that are no longer cancerous are removed. He's cured. And let's get to the study that I worked on. I had the most involvement in of the 3 studies that I have worked on with nearly 5,000 experiencers, and mentioned that yesterday. And we ended up using 516 of the surveys that we received. There were 2 PhD psychologists who were on our initial phase 1 study, plus several members of our team. On the second phase of the study, Dr. Don C. Donderi administered the American Personality Inventory. Now, he was a professor of research psychology at McGill University. Now retired, he worked on some studies with Bud Hopkins, and Bud Hopkins and Ted Davis used the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory to develop this, and then Dr. Donderi assisted them in standardizing this test. And so what you see here is the second phase. We had 175 of our experiencers who took this part of the test and participated in phase 2. Here they are spread out. These are the individuals with UFO abduction syndrome from the first study when Dr. Donderi standardized it at the university. This is the center. This is the mean for the group of experiencers who had UFO abduction syndrome. These are the individuals who were members of the community, the control group. We had one who came very close to that. And then simulators, people who know a great deal about the topic, but were not really experiencers of ET contact, according to the American Personality Inventory. So moving on, we discovered some very important things in our study, that the majority of our participants had interacted with any of a variety of grays, from small grays, like what my aunt and uncle saw, they weren't wearing their eye shields, to and the grays who were a little taller or a little smaller, who had black eyes, and then the tall grays who were over 5.5 feet tall. The experiencers who participated, 516, stated that they were businesslike in their approach, who reassured the experiencers through kindness, but then took DNA from them. Then we had the highly positive entities. And in Fri's study, these were number 1, these Nordic types. And in our study, they were the number 2 group, just under the grays. We also had reports of very kind light beings. And I just put this in here because I didn't have enough room for it. This type of entity who, I'm really not sure if that was the one that you saw on the film that I showed you a little bit earlier, or if this is actually an avian. Then the mantis types were number 3, about 20%, and the reptilian types about 20%. The mantis types seem to be growing in numbers, and not from statistical information that we have, but just from the reports that I've been receiving. And then we have the tall whites as well. So the highly negative, malevolent ETs or negative shape-shifting entities were a very small group. Less than 10% in our study. What age were you when you were first taken? 72% said that they were under 20 years old among survey takers. Among those with UFO abduction syndrome in phase 2, 80% were under age 20. And they said that they were taken on to craft, and one of the things that they did for fun was to learn to levitate discs. They also played with orbs. We asked, have you awakened to find yourself unable to move or cry out? 510 responded. Of the survey takers overall, 74% said yes. Of the abductee group, it was 90%. So, the skeptics say that all of this is the result of sleep paralysis. But then we asked, have you been awake, but then saw a non-human and became unable to move or cry out? Among the survey takers, 36% said yes, but 60% of the abductee group had this occur. We asked, do you recall having a close encounter with a UFO at less than 500 feet in the distance? All 516 answered. 65% of the survey takers had this occur. 70% of the abductees, family members, had the same percentages. We asked, has your intuitive or psychic ability increased in association with your abductions or ET contact events? 509 responded. Among the abductee group, 65% said yes. The survey takers, 52%. We asked, have you experienced paranormal phenomena in your home? Now we know that there are many explanations for this, not just extraterrestrial contact, but it seems to be an overlay. It seems to be very much related. 69% of the people who participated in our study said yes. And the two most prevalent were orbs that seemed to have intelligence. 51% of the survey takers and 50% of the abductee group said yes. The sensation that something unseen is walking on the bed. 58% of the survey takers, 75% of the abductee group. We asked, if you could end your abductions or ET contact events, would you? 29% answered yes. 71% did not want their events to end. We asked, have your contact events changed your religious beliefs? 86% of the abductee group had become more spiritual. 69% of the overall survey takers. And time and acceptance change everything. And all of our studies have indicated this, and also academic studies on experiencers, such as was done at the University of Connecticut by Kenneth Ring and Christopher Rosing. You become less concerned about material possessions. You begin to love your ET friends. You become spiritual. You become psychic. You become an empath. You might be healed. You are concerned about the welfare of our planet. You may or may not discover your special purpose, but you know that you have one. You want contact to continue. You receive messages from them. You long to be with them, and you feel a sense of universal connectedness. And I'm going to end today's presentation here. And these are my books. This has been published, Science Was Wrong, in Chinese, and Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted, has been published in French. You can see it right here. The 60th anniversary edition of Captured. My newer books, Forbidden Knowledge 1, Forbidden Knowledge 2nd edition. And an interesting book that Stanton and Friedman and I wrote together. We collaborated on 3 books, but this is on the history of government involvement, fact, fiction, and flying saucers in the investigation of UFOs, the major studies they have conducted, the results of their studies, the decision to cover up their information and why, and those who were involved in the cover-up and their modus operandi and what they did to every major case historically. So I'm going to stop the share now and come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen.
My pleasure.
You know, I just finished reading John Mack's second book called Passport to the Cosmos.
Yes.
And he really affirms everything you're saying. He divides the various experiencers that he was interacting with, which weren't nearly as many as what you've done, mostly because he didn't have that much time. He
Right.
had that very unfortunate accident and was killed in London prematurely. But he divides them up into 3 categories. He says there was sort of scientific investigation by the ETs of humans, but also animals and other aspects of our planetary ecology. Secondly, that they were communicating warnings to humans that we are destroying ourselves and destroying the environment, and we're particularly concerned about nuclear weapons. And then thirdly, was the whole domain of spiritual transformation.
Absolutely.
Even though people initially experienced trauma, particularly if they were poked or something in the scientific investigation stage, shall we say, overwhelmingly the overall impact of the experience in its totality was experienced as positive, transformational, life-changing, and they basically wanted more. So I wanted to bring that into the conversation from the original real experiencer researcher. And what comments would you make on those findings from John Mack based on your far more extensive research over a far more extensive period of time?
I want to say that I knew and admired John Mack. I was in his office at Harvard and had a conversation with him. And so I agree 100% with what he said. My research bears that out. I showed you only a tiny amount of the research that I've done because of the time frame that I have today. But over and over again, historically and today, experiencers continue to be shown images of destruction to our environment, given warnings about the human failure to be good stewards to our environment and how this could lead to the environmental collapse of life on our planet. And they don't want that to happen. They've been educating us for years, but unfortunately, most people don't take that home. They don't realize that until they undergo hypnosis, and then it comes out. Also, the threat of nuclear war. They extraordinarily worrisome about this. They say that this is the reason that when we developed this technology, they came and they have stayed. They were previously coming back from time to time to assist in our development, but now we've reached the point where we could destroy ourselves. They don't want that to happen. In fact, a group that I communicated with stated that they will interfere if we reach the point where we are about to destroy our planet. And, they've certainly demonstrated to the military that they can shut down our nuclear weapons or they can activate them, as well as, what happened in the Soviet Union many years ago. So activate and then turn them off. So all of those things are true. In messages we've received, they say that our spiritual development is out of sync with our technological progress, and that when this occurs, it could lead to the disintegration of the species, is the way they put it. They don't want to see this. This is the reason that they are quietly interfering. They are attempting to increase human spirituality so that life on this planet will exist, will remain, will grow and survive.
Let me ask you this, and I know it's a subjective evaluation on your part, but given the urgency, many of the people in contemplating the ET presence wonder, why don't the ETs just walk into the Oval Room of the White House and tell Joe Biden that he's got to stop, or Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, and to be more demonstrative, land on the mall in Washington or do something that will command attention. And yet they don't. They remain essentially gossamer, but their message is one of urgency. Based on everything how do you understand the subtlety of the ET presence on Earth, rather than a dramatic warning that would really wake people up?
Well, this is one of the questions that I asked to a group of ETs that we did obtain physical evidence of their presence.
Wow.
When the fifth dimensionals came into the room, we might see a little bit of a shimmering outline. We could feel a strong tingling sensation in our bodies, and the temperature of the communicator, of the environment around him, increased. It registered on a laser thermometer as much as 7.5 degrees. There were 2 ninth dimensionals involved, and the temperature increased 10 degrees. Now, I'm not saying the human being's temperature. He was perspiring profusely. We learned to communicate telepathically with these entities. They came into our homes and communicated with us. They showed us a lot of evidence. So when I asked that question, they said, we have contacted the heads of state around the world. We have contacted business leaders, and they are not interested in us. They fear our presence. If we show ourselves in large numbers in cities around the world, they will perceive this as an invasion, and the outcome will not be good for you. And so therefore we work quietly, but we are working toward the realization by more than 50% of the population that we are here and that we're not here to harm you. And when this occurs, then we will reveal ourselves when you are ready. You're not ready right now.
Yeah, interesting comment. Interesting comment. Now, what's your sense of those 10, 15% of negative experiences, the malevolence? You've referred to them as shapeshifters. Have you ever met a malevolent ET? What is your understanding of them as contrasted with the more positive ETs, et cetera? How do you evaluate the range of ET reality?
A small percentage of the people that I have worked with had contact with malevolent entities. One was taken to an underground tunnel where he received just horrifying treatment, saw humans being executed, that sort of thing. When I was working with him, it was so horrifying. I'm not going to go into details,
Yeah.
but it was so horrifying that immediately all of the tingling that I have in my body, and I do have that because of my ET contact, left. I'm not sure if it was through my solar plexus or my heart chakra, but it left my body immediately. And a dark cloud came over me. And
Wow.
I ended up suffering from this. I tried to get rid of it using various methods, and it would not leave me. It interfered with my sleep. It gave me aches and pains in my bodies. And finally, I contacted Kevin Briggs, who was the experiencer involved in that the study, an experiment that a team of researchers did. And I said to him, I cannot contact the Council of Eight now because my vibrational frequency is too low. I can't do anything to raise it. Will you please contact them and ask for healing? He did, and immediately that negativity lifted, that negative entity that
Wow.
ended up speaking to me in my head before I became terribly alarmed and said, "This is it. It's I'm ending this today." So immediately I was healed by a ninth dimensional. He was taken away. There's
So
another.
you were healed by the intervention of another ET.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you've said something about the fifth dimension and now the ninth dimension. Explain more about what that means.
On this Council of Eight that was made up of a variety of different types of extraterrestrials, most of them were fifth dimensionals. They live very much like us in a sense.
In terms of we're in three dimensions, time, space, depth,
yes,
so forth and so on. So they're living in five dimensions. And then the ninth dimensional, they're living in nine dimensions.
Yes, the fifth and sixth dimensionals at a higher level of consciousness, a higher vibrational frequency. The human visual range is very narrow. So we could not see them unless, if they wanted to use technology, we would be able to. When we see them, we can certainly see shimmering or maybe an outline, and we can definitely feel that strong electrical tingling sensation throughout our bodies. The ninth dimensionals no longer have a body. They say that they one time lived on this planet, but that they have elevated up the scale to where they no longer have a physical body.
What we would think of as the angelic plane, where they're such a high frequency, they no longer have physical form.
Yes, you might think of it as that plane. In fact, there were two of them. One named Ra, and I thought immediately, is this the Egyptian sun god? And he said, "No, I'm not." He said, "I did live in Egypt at one time." He said, "I am a watcher. I am watching over this quadrant of your galaxy." And then the other, Shiva, not the Indian god Shiva, this is a female. And Shiva is a healer. And we saw her sort of as a shadow figure, like an angel with wings. We could see angel wings, but we were told that we were seeing her as we perceived she would look, not as the way she actually looked. They appeared as orbs. That's what they said they would appear as today, not having a physical form. only consciousness. And Shiva was a very powerful healer who has worked with our group, has worked with us individually and healed us.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. Now, are there levels above the 9? I imagine, because the hierarchy of being probably goes pretty far up. If a 9th
Yes.
dimension is just in charge of this quadrant of the galaxy, one would presume that there's 12th and maybe a higher dimensions of being. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, there are higher dimensions of beings. You know, they said we are not gods, the 9th dimensionals, but there is one source consciousness, which is the highest level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Right, right, right. And then in terms of sort of your cosmology, where do the malevolent or the ones on the dark side, is it kind of a vertical and each level, 5, 9 has a light and shadow dimension? Is it another configuration? How do you understand that?
Well, these dark entities are able to materialize in a person's home and are very negative. They attach to people, they make people ill, take away their energy, they feed off negativity. So these individuals become negative, their vibrational frequency lowers, and they become food for these negative entities. They're
Yes,
particularly attracted to people who have addictions, such as an alcohol addiction, which lowers the vibrational frequency. Studies have been done on that in India. Also, people who take opioids, or people who are suffering from clinical depression might be targeted. These types of things.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Well, Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda material they talk about entities, and they're in their cosmology, they're not ETs as much as just invisible entities at higher dimensions, but are basically terrestrial.
Mm-hmm.
And Skinwalker Ranch. I
Yes.
mean, whatever's happening at Skinwalker Ranch, man, they've tapped into a hornet's nest of
They have.
malevolent entities. And there's this whole hitchhiker effect.
Mm-hmm.
Where they follow you around and they go to your home even though you're 1,000 miles away, and begin to plague your family and do all kinds of weird things. So have you had any experience of that level of?
I have investigated a case that took place in the southwestern United States. A commercial pilot had retired and had opened a small airport. He lived on the airport, started to have ET contact, knew very little about it, tried to attract the ETs to come in and sit down to have a conversation with him. That is not what happened. He was up in the middle of the night one night talking with a family member who worked overseas. And then he went to the window, looking over the hangar, and below he saw one large bark brown entity without clothing, and then 3 small white entities who were almost translucent, and they moved when they saw him. They moved like a gate in unison, like the gate would swing. And the next thing he knew, he was waking up. So that they began taking him. He was angry. He wanted this to end. He couldn't stop it. They continued to take him. One time he ended up a mile away from his home in the middle of the night without shoes, dressed only in jockey shorts. He ended up handcuffing himself to his bed,
Wow.
putting boards over the windows of the bedroom. He could not prevent himself from being taken. And then the Skinwalker Ranch things were happening. Portals were opening up. His family had an intervention with them. They thought that he needed to see a psychiatrist. And he said, just give me a chance. Stay with me, and I'll prove this to you. And he and his mother were looking out the window, and they saw a grassy savanna with mammoths grazing. There were women who were like ghost-like, who had died at that airport years earlier in crashes. I spoke to his best friend, who was a state trooper. I spoke to family members as well, and there was some highly negative activity, yet he was trying to overcome this. I think that he responded by using too much negativity, by shooting one of them, which disappeared into a flash of blue light, and ended up with deep scratches down his chest. Just an awful lot going on.
Right.
Losing his health, finally bleeding out and passing. Unfortunately.
Well, two comments from the chat that I think are very interesting. Giorgio Piacenza saying there could also be a group of disincarnated ETs, soul trapped inside the Earth's astral field, trying to negatively influence world events. And then Shannon MacArthur is asking a very obvious, important question. And that is, so you get in that situation, can you appeal to the angels, to Jesus, to whoever it is that you believe is on the light side for help? I mean, what's the relationship between, say, Jesus and the Buddha and these great avatars on the one hand, and these ET experiences generally? But say you get caught in a negative situation, who can you appeal to?
Well, he did appeal to religion. He was Catholic. He then became a born-again Christian, attempting to use this to ward off these negative entities. There was a light being. I showed it in my presentation. It was a photograph from a video taken in his home. He felt that the dark energy was behind that light being, and he was being protected at that time.
Right.
I say project love. If you project love, these negative entities are not going to be attracted to you. You're not going to be food for them. You have to become a loving person. And, love is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Kindness.
Yeah, it's the great energizer, it's the great unifier, and it's the great protector.
Absolutely.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think that's actually a nice final word, Kathleen, on this matter, because, with all the complexity and all the unknowns and all the, speculation that's out there, coming down as you have after all your experiences to the profound reality and imperative to love and embrace whatever it is that's happening to you is your surest way to get the most out of the experience and to protect you from any negativity that might be embedded in the experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And just so everybody knows, Kathleen and I are in conversation about Kathleen preparing a course for our certificate program on extraterrestrial awareness and communication, which is part of the New Paradigm Institute Ubiquity ET Studies program, leading to master's and PhD degrees. So Kathleen's going to be back As you can see, she's deeply wise and deeply experienced in these matters. You can now join her in the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. You received the information in your Zoom invite for today, although I would note that many of us never got the Zoom invite for today. So as we're discovering, as Zoom continues to upgrade, Zoom has its own consciousness, and sometimes the entities are in Zoom. But hopefully we'll be better equipped on Monday. And then on Monday, everyone, we're starting a 2-week program on peace, leading up to the UN Day of Peace on the 21st. So that's on Humanity Rising for the next 10 days. Thank you so much, Kathleen. This has been marvelous.
My pleasure.
And I look forward to being in touch on other matters. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. See you Monday. Bye for now.